I am so excited that so many of you are being inspired and getting into acrylic pouring. It's a very accessible art technique. It's a very accessible painting technique, and it makes art fun, and that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be intimidating. It shouldn't make you feel inadequate. It should be a way to express yourself. And so if you can throw some paint on the canvas and feel like you got something out, then you're doing it right. Hey guys, it's Courtney Hoelscher. If you're new to my channel, I make videos regarding acrylic pouring, as well as sometimes I do tours of my visual journals. Today I'm going to do a video regarding some of the questions that I get in the comments the most. I thought that that might be helpful. I have a Patreon now. I'll put the link in the description below, as well as along the bottom of the screen here. If you would like to help make this venture a little more sustainable, help me possibly pay for an editor in the future to help me out with some time management stuff, and to possibly help upgrade some of my equipment, get a better camera, pay for some more art supplies, that sort of thing. I have a Teespring account now. You'll be seeing a banner below my videos soon with some merch that you can purchase. Also, the link to that Teespring account will be here at the bottom of the video. The topics that I'm going to cover today are whether or not I varnish my paintings and why I've used resin sometimes and why I don't much anymore, what it is that I use for swiping, what is that material and what am I spraying on it that I am then swiping across my canvas, why I don't use silicone, why I am loyal to Golden brand paints, how much paint do I use for each canvas size, where I get my float frames, do you have to flood the canvas first with wet paint before you pour, how do I sell my artwork, where is my art available for sale, and a few other topics. I know this is going to be a long video, so I will try to put some timestamps in the description so that you can click on it and go directly to the topic that you're most interested in. But I'd love it if you watch the whole thing for my metrics. That'd be great. YouTube pays attention to whether people watch your video all the way through or just watch the first 30 seconds and then click away. So if you want to support me, another way to support me if you don't have the money to support me is to just let my videos play all the way through. Even if, for instance, this one, you want to click to a certain part, if you want to leave your computer playing my video and you got to go do laundry or something, that'd be super helpful, because then the more my videos play through for people, the more videos that are watched, then the more YouTube will suggest my videos to other viewers. So here we go. Looking at my notes, I have had a lot of questions asking about whether I seal my paintings with anything, whether I use a varnish, if that is resin on some of my paintings. So I do not seal my paintings. Acrylic is an archival medium. There's no need to seal it. I think that maybe a lot of acrylic pouring artists are varnishing their artwork in order to make the finish look a little more appealing, because maybe some recipes dry, bumpy, and or with an unattractive matte finish. My recipe dries with a nice semi-gloss finish that I'm very happy with. It's smooth and consistent, and I think it's quite attractive on its own. I don't feel like there is any need for a varnish of any sort. I use GAC 800 as my pouring medium, along with Floetrol, and those two things, along with the paint pigment, add a ratio of the GAC 800 is 3 parts to Floetrol, 2 parts to the pigment being 1 part. So for instance, and you could change the amounts of each part. For instance, if it was 3 ounces of GAC 800, then it would be 2 ounces of the flood Floetrol and 1 ounce of the pigment. Or if you didn't have a measuring utensil, you could fill 1 cup 3 times of the GAC 800, fill the same cup 2 times of the flood Floetrol, and fill the cup 1 time with your paint, and then mix those together, and that would be the ratio that you would need. So I like working in ratios because then it's scalable, right? You can mix a very large amount or you can mix a very small amount. The GAC 800 pouring medium has a gloss finish, and the flood Floetrol tends to dry with a very matte finish, but the two of them combined come together to be a sort of semi-gloss that I think is very nice. So no varnish. I did mess around with resin a little bit, mostly back in March of last year. So it's been quite a while. I was doing quite a bit of resin and then playing around with layers, like doing an acrylic pour under the resin, then a coat of clear resin, and then I would do maybe another acrylic pour leaving some uncovered so that you saw the layers underneath. I also played around with drawing on top of the resin, so there was a layered effect. Drawing with an oil-based enamel paint pen, those kinds that you shake and you hear the metal ball bouncing around inside, and I had some luck with that stuff. It looked pretty cool, but I will say that resin can be slightly toxic. You should definitely wear a mask and gloves when you're working with it, and I was not wearing a mask, and at that time, I don't know if it was the resin. I think that maybe there were some other things going on with my health at that time, but I started getting hives, and I had a case of hives that didn't go away for about 6 months. I really had to do an elimination diet and get super healthy and clean before they ever really disappeared. So just be really careful with resin, and I am scared of it. I don't really mess around around with it much anymore for that reason. The second one that is related to that is I've had people ask me if I've messed around with pigments in resin and doing acrylic pour type stuff with pigmented resin, and no, I have not. I've seen people doing it. It looks really cool. That's not the direction that I want to go. I watched some of those videos online. It looks super fun. But again, resin sort of scares me right now, so I'm just not going to mess with it. Third question was, what is that cloth or paper that I'm using, and what am I spraying on the paper that I'm swiping with? I usually work from my school, and the paper that I'm using is the cheap paper towels that our school provides us. My custodian, when he's emptying the dispensers or refilling the dispensers, he will give me what's left on the end of the roll. So I have lots of little almost used up rolls, and instead of them going in the trash, I use them for my pours. And it's just brown, cheap. It just pushes the water around if you actually use it as a paper towel. Like, they're not very absorbent. And then I just have a spray bottle with water that I spritz on the edge of it, and then that sort of weighs it down so it makes contact with the paint a little better. Brown paper towel and water is what I'm using in those swipes. Fourth question, why no silicone? I do not use silicone because I don't want to have to, first of all, scrub it clean afterwards with Dawn soap or whatever you would use. It just seems like such a mess. Silicone is hard to clean. It hasn't been shown that it's archival. It could possibly yellow over time. It could compromise your paintings. Also, it could get trapped underneath. It doesn't necessarily all rise to the surface. And if that silicone gets trapped within the layers of your acrylic, it could compromise the strength of your acrylic because there's a squishy bit that is not going to ever dry completely. Silicone's not going to dry. So I don't use silicone. How do I get away with cells without using silicone though? I have done some research through Golden Artist Colors brand. Their website has lots of resources. So to answer two questions at a time, why I don't use silicone, but also why I love Golden paint so much, let's visit Golden Artist Colors website. So here on their website, you will see that there is a tab called Resources. You should take some time to explore that. All resources. Scrolling down, you'll see they've got a million articles under the environment and how their paints are tested to affect the environment or not. Technical information about maybe light fastness and that sort of thing. They have product support, questions regarding customer service and that stuff, health and safety, custom lab. And then this Just Paint is an online magazine that they produce with lots of great information. Scrolling down, you can see the different topics that they've covered. They have the JP Experience, Just Paint Experience, which is, I guess, set up sort of in a blog format. Here is a resource for pourers, acrylic pouring. Click on that and you will find, of course, demonstration videos, which are super entertaining to watch, and you should to see the different ideas that you could come up with. But also, the thing I want you to see is this pigment density chart. So clicking on that, I want to show you that for each one of their pigments, no matter which line you're choosing, the open, the fluid, or the heavy body paints, they have laid out the specific gravity of each one. So for instance, if we take iridescent stainless steel, which is their heaviest paint, 7.2 specific gravity, and diarylide yellow 1.27, which is their lightest pigment, then theoretically, if you were to layer those, covering your canvas, coating it with the wet diarylide yellow, and then you wanted to do a swipe of the stainless steel on top, then the stainless steel being heavier, denser, bigger specific gravity, it's going to fall through the diarylide yellow. And so it'll look like it's covered with the stainless steel, and then with time, the yellow will start poking through because the stainless steel is falling to the bottom of the wet paint surface. And that, because of how the molecules bond together, creates those circular cells that you're looking for, and you don't have to use the silicone. And then you don't have to scrub the silicone, and you don't have to worry about it getting trapped inside your paint, and you don't have to worry about it yellowing over time. So think about using this chart to help decide which paints you will swipe over the others, which pigments you would swipe over the others. I see the paints I use here, carbon black is sort of middle of the road. I've got iridescent pearl, iridescent gold here. I use those a lot. Down here is zinc white. I tried using that because I thought maybe that would be better than titanium white since it is more dense, but it is a more transparent white, so it tended to just disappear because not only did it sink, but the other colors shone through the transparency of this white. It's also a little bit warmer of a white, and I like the coolness of the titanium white. Down here is my micaceous oxide, which definitely I would consider that to be on the dense side. Burnt sienna, I use that a lot. So you just sort of need to get to know your pigments and understand how they are going to behave with each other based on their specific gravity. And that will help you to do some acrylic pouring without the silicone. And if you aren't a swiper, if you do the flip cups, then same thing. You would put the denser pigments on the bottom of your cup and the lighter pigments on top, and then when you flip it and you release it, then your dense pigments being on top will fall through the lighter pigments and you will get those cells. So try it. I've had several people ask me where I get my frames. The most recent paintings I've done, and I'll show a couple here, the 30 by 40, I had some gold frames. Those were donated to me by a frame shop that was going out of business. They donated them to the school. We've used them for several things at the school. They're very well worn, but no one seems to be taking them. We've used them in some theater productions and stuff, but I thought it's time to use them. So I bought some canvases that fit them, and we've been using them for that. But I also have quite a few paintings that I have framed with the float frames, black float frames, mostly on my 16 by 20 canvases, and I'll show a picture of a couple of them here. Those came from Jerry's Artarama. And so I want to show you where they are and how you can go about getting them. So looking on the screen here, I've Googled Jerry's Artarama, clicking on that. This is a North Carolina-based company, which is where I live, so I love the fact that I'm supporting a local business. Also, you can see free shipping on orders over $35, which mine usually are. And I'm still supporting someone local, and their prices are super low. So scrolling down, you can go to Frames and Mats, and over here to Canvas Floater Frames. And then you can see that there are the ampersand floater frames, which I have bought one or two of. They're so nice, but they're also pretty expensive. So I have chosen to continue to buy the Illusions floater frames. And I get the 1.5 inch deep frame. So I'm clicking on that. And then once you click on that, you can scroll down and choose from a wide assortment of sizes, as you see here. So this size is related to the canvas with which it fits. So 5 by 7 would be a canvas that is 5 by 7. The frame accommodates that canvas. So I have been getting the 16 by 20. So that's this one. And you can see that the Jerry's price is $34.99. The sale price is $30.79. I've bought that. I will say that I don't like the finish that comes on them. It's like a matte chalky black, and so I have painted them again before I frame my canvases, my paintings with them, to be just a better coat of paint, and a slightly glossier black. And I've been very happy with them. And they come with all the backing hardware that you need. I think it's like 2 per side of these little brackets that you screw into the wooden frame, as well as the eye hooks and the wire for hanging it on a wall. So, and I mean, that's a pretty good deal if you've shopped around for float frames. $20 for a float frame is pretty darn cheap compared to my local art store. They're like $60, $70 for a frame. I can't afford that. That would cut into any sort of profit I hoped to make on these paintings, especially when you take into account the cost of the canvas, the cost of the paint and the mediums, and also just my time. So yeah, I would recommend checking out these floater frames here on Jerry's Artarama. I also get my paint from there. They have all of the golden acrylic mediums. They have the heavy-bodied, they have the pouring mediums items. I get whole gallons of my GAC 800 here on this website, and the fluid line is what I buy. And you can see once you click on it, that once you click on it, you scroll down, and for every color, and scrolling, you can see they've got all the colors you could possibly want. Scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. For every color, they have various sizes that you could order. So you could order 4 ounce, 8 ounce, 16 ounce, 32 ounce, or even a gallon. Now, you might not be able to get a gallon of a more specialized color like this, but you know, they're going to give you a gallon of titanium white, and then the various prices. And of course, the price per ounce goes down as you buy more. So that's where I get my paint and my canvases and my frames. They've got really affordable canvases on there as well. I've been buying the Practica line. They're quite affordable. They're not the best canvases. The wood frame does not seem like it's a super hard wood. The canvas seems quite thin, but for my purposes it has not caused any problems. The frame doesn't warp, the canvas doesn't split. It does great. It doesn't sag when I'm trying to paint. So I've been very happy with the stuff I found on Jerry's Art Around. You should check it out. People have asked me to talk about how I've gone about selling my art. That's been a long, hard struggle, and I will just have to say it has to do with getting your name out there. Step one was my husband and I built a website. So this is my website. He is a web designer, so he was able to give me lots of advice. So the first thing he said was I needed to start a blog and have lots of topics and update it often, at least once a month. And you can see from this top post that was back in May, I'm a little behind. I need to write a blog post. But I do have some helpful blog topics on here that I'll refer to and some questions here in a bit. But just writing a blog also helps divert web traffic to your website, because then in the search engines you have more words that would just be searchable. So it helps with your SEO rankings, if you know anything about that. But besides my blog, I also have a gallery where I have all the art that I've ever done right here. The categories are my alcohol inks, acrylic pours, and so on, even older stuff back to college. I have my visual journals in a whole section, and this I'm really proud of my visual journal section, because I painstakingly made it to where you could click on any one of them and you can actually flip through it like a book. So if you are a fan of my Visual Journal Fridays series, you can go back and look through my visual journals in more detail right here on my website. But the big one is art for sale. I have a tab with art for sale. I have prints for sale, merchandise, and then my originals are for sale right here on my website as well. And I have, as my online presence through YouTube has increased, I have started to sell quite a few paintings off of my website. Now, I won't say that if you do not have an active web presence through YouTube or one of the other social media platforms, you might not get traffic to your website for people to see your paintings. So you have to think about it in a global sense, that you're on all the social media platforms and you are driving traffic to your website, and then you can start selling paintings there. I also am very active in my local arts councils. Here in my county, we have Henderson County Arts Council, we have Henderson County Arts League, we have an Advocates for the Arts group, as well as a group called Artscape, and all of those I am active with and try to get my name out with them so that I am in local shows and people can see my art out on display. I currently have my art on display at a local church, and then also I have some art hanging on a wall at a local massage therapist's office. So just any chance you can get to have your art not in a closet but out on a wall where the public can see it will help you to sell art. And that's step one, is just getting yourself out there. And it's a hustle and you have to work hard at it, and it's a constant thing. So, and you could also consider these traveling festivals where you can sort of sell your art at a booth. I have a friend that does that full time as a potter. Now she sells stuff in boutiques more, but when she was just doing festivals, she had a rule though, and I'll pass this on to you. If you're selling at festivals, it's almost not even worth it to sell art at a festival that has the food in the name of the festival. For instance, we have an annual apple festival here in Henderson County. People aren't there to buy art. People are there for the food trucks and the games and the rides and the apples. Same with a barbecue festival or whatever. Like, you might want to just skip those festivals. But we also have a festival called Art on Main, and people are coming for the art because the whole Main Street is lined with booths that are selling art, and it's called Art on Main, so you could sell at that. This website's pretty sophisticated because, again, my husband, it's his career and he helped to make it awesome. But if you clicked on any one of my artworks, then to a full description about it, also linking to the YouTube video that it is related to, where the person thinking about buying it could possibly check out watching me paint it originally. I have multiple views of it in a frame, and then if you scroll down, it suggests other artworks for that person to consider as well. So that answers how I go about selling my art. The answer is, it's a hustle, and there's not one thing to do. There's a million things to do from every angle you can possibly think of. Publicity is a big part of it. All right, next question. Oh, hello, doggy. What you doing? Another question I get a lot is, do you have to flood the canvas with wet paint first? I see plenty of artists that don't, but they're overcompensating by just putting more paint in their flip cup or whatever. Now with my swipe technique, you sort of have to coat it with wet paint first because I'm swiping wet on wet. But maybe you think with a flip cup that you don't have to. Well, it just depends on how much paint is in your cup, right? Like when you release the cup, is it enough paint that's gonna flow out over the whole canvas? If not, then you're gonna have dry spots that drag. And I really like, some people like the ripples that are created when it's trying to run across the canvas and it misses some spots. I do not like that. So I try to make sure there's a good wet coat of paint on my canvas to start. That helps with surface tension. A dry surface is going to have a lot more tension against that paint running across it than a wet surface. So if you have the wet surface, then your paint's going to flow across a lot better. So it might seem like you're wasting paint and just covering it up, but it helps the overall look of an acrylic pour if it's wet on wet. That's just part of the technique. So my answer is yes, you need to flood your canvas with wet paint to begin with. Going back to my blog, I did a blog post regarding another question that I had quite a lot of, and that was how much paint to mix. And this is the blog post here. I will link to it in the description below. But how much paint do I need to mix up for an acrylic painting? And I've had so many follow-up questions on this, so you could even look in the comments. If you have a question, you might find it answered in the comments of this. But I start off that, I really wish that someone had some sort of formula for the size of the canvas and how much paint to do for a flip cup per se. So I sort of came up with my own formula. And some people might disagree that this is not consistent with other people's formulas, but it's what works for me. And maybe my paint is runnier than other people's paint. So of course people have different amounts that they use based on the consistency of their recipe. So you just have to play around with it and see what works for you. Also in my blog, I have a couple, I have an article that goes into a little more depth about visual journaling and what it is and why I do it and how you could get started doing it. I have a couple of blog posts about color theory and how it's just not as simple as yellow and blue make green. It's just not that simple. And I go into more detail about that. So if you're struggling with getting the colors you want, or maybe your colors are getting super muddy when they mix together when you think that they shouldn't, you should read this article because there are warm and cool versions of every color. For instance, you think red, you think that's a warm color, but there are cool reds and warm reds. And yellows, there are cool yellows and warm yellows. And if you mix a cool red with a warm yellow, you're gonna get an unattractive color. So check that article out. So here's my Patreon. I will link to this in the description. You can see I've got 6 patrons so far. Woohoo! Thanks, guys. If you're interested in becoming a patron, I'll go ahead and show you that there is a tier system. If you pledge $5 or more a month, you get your name in the credits of my videos. If you pledge $15 a month, you will get a verbal shout out by me in my videos. And if you pledge $50 or more a month, you will get a sticker in the mail as well as a handwritten thank you from yours truly, because you're awesome to support me in that way. So think about it. Also, you'll get access to some fun behind the scenes posts like this one about my bug struggle. If you watch my videos, you know what I'm talking about. And then also my Teespring. This is the place where I am selling merch now. I have t-shirts, I have coffee mugs, long sleeve, short sleeve hoodies, and kids and tank tops. I'm hoping to add some more merch in the future, but for now that's what's available, and hopefully that stuff will show up in a banner below my videos soon. But for now you can follow this link. I'll put that again down here as well as in the description. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope that answered some of your lingering questions. If you have other questions that you'd like for me to cover in an upcoming video, let me know, because I would love to answer your questions. That's what I'm here for. I am so excited that so many of you are being inspired and getting into acrylic pouring. It's a very accessible art technique. It's a very accessible painting technique, and it makes art fun, and that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be intimidating. It shouldn't make you feel inadequate. It should be a way to express yourself. And so if you can throw some paint on the canvas and feel like you got something out, then you're doing it right. And so I appreciate all of you for sticking with me and watching all these videos. You're awesome. Hey, I want to give a special thanks to Luke Coakley. You are an extra special patron. Thank you for your generosity.